The hospital room smelled of medication and something subtly bitter, perhaps the very scent of mortality. Naomi Rivers sat on a hard chair next to the bed, watching her father. Marcus Sterling, once the powerful owner of a sprawling manufacturing empire known as Sterling Tech Group, now seemed frail and tiny beneath the crisp white sheet. His face was drawn, his skin had taken on a waxy hue, and those eyes, the same eyes that once commanded fear from partners during high-stakes negotiations, now gazed at his daughter with an inexpressible tenderness. Outside the window, a late May afternoon was fading into sunset over the city. The sun cast timid rays onto the walls of the room, but this beauty felt like a cruel mockery. Life was draining out of the man Naomi loved more than anyone else in the world, yet the world continued to exist as if nothing extraordinary were happening. "Dad," Naomi whispered, gently squeezing his cold hand, "don't talk right now. Just rest." Marcus weakly shook his head. His lips trembled, and he forced out, "My daughter, I need to speak. There is little time left." Naomi felt a painful clench in her heart. She knew this moment was coming, but she was still unprepared. Her father was the only person, besides her mother, who had truly loved her. Naomi's mother had divorced him when Naomi was 8 years old, leaving her daughter with her own surname, Rivers. The divorce was quiet. Naomi saw her father on weekends and holidays. She lived with her mother in another state until she was 16. Her father continued to provide for them well. Then her mother suffered a stroke and couldn't be saved. Since then, Marcus had been both parents to his daughter. Though work consumed nearly all his time, he made an effort. Every evening he came home, he would stop by her room, ask how she was doing, and give her a hug. Those hugs were Naomi's whole world. "I'm listening, Dad," she whispered, trying to hold back the tears. Marcus drew a breath. Every word was an exertion. "You will receive my entire inheritance, the company, the money, the properties, everything." Naomi nodded. She had expected this. There were no other heirs. Her father's relatives had long been estranged. Friends had turned out to be false when his illness struck. Only the two of them remained. "But," her father continued, and his gaze sharpened as if his old power flashed for the last time, "there is one condition. It is stipulated in the will. You must work as a cleaner for exactly 1 year." Naomi froze. She wasn't sure she had heard correctly. Was this some delirium induced by the drugs? But her father's eyes were clear and steady. "What, Dad? I don't understand." "1 year?" Marcus repeated, his fingers weakly pressing her hand. 12 months. As a regular cleaner using your mother's surname, Rivers. No one must know who you are. If you refuse, or if you don't last the year, everything goes to the Sterling Legacy Foundation. No exceptions. Naomi opened her mouth, but no words came out. A cleaner? She, Naomi Rivers, a graduate of an elite university, a woman who had spent her entire life in luxury, was expected to scrub floors. It seemed absurd, a cruel joke. "But why?" she finally managed to exhale. "Dad, this is ridiculous. Why do I have to do this?" Marcus closed his eyes. A shadow of a smile, sad yet full of resolve, crossed his face. "Because you have never known how ordinary people live. The people who work for my company for minimum wage, who count every cent each month, who are afraid to lose their jobs, who endure humiliation just for a paycheck. You are smart and you are kind, but you don't understand their world. And without that understanding, you can't be a true leader." Naomi was silent. Inside, protest, offense, and incomprehension simmered. But at the same time, she saw how important this was to her father. His face glowed with determination despite his physical weakness. "You will learn who is truly honest," Marcus whispered, "and who is a crook, who deserves trust, and who is a traitor. This will be your real university. You will see people without masks because they won't know who you are. And you will understand what it means to be weak, unprotected, invisible." He fell silent, gathering his strength. Naomi felt tears sting her eyes. "I built this company." her father continued, barely audible. "And I was always proud that I created jobs, that I gave people a chance, but over time, I grew distant. I stopped seeing the simple employees, and they are the foundation of everything. Without them, the company is nothing. I want you to understand that. Before you lead this empire, you must go through what the most unnoticed, most vulnerable people go through." Naomi nodded. The tears finally broke free, running down her cheeks. She understood her father's logic, but it felt so terrifying, so incredibly difficult. A year of potential humiliation, hard labor, a life she wasn't accustomed to. Could she endure it? "Okay," she said hoarsely, wiping her eyes. "Okay, Dad, I'll do it. I promise." Marcus smiled for the first time in many days. His hand relaxed in hers, as if a great weight had lifted from his soul. "My clever girl," he breathed out. "I knew you could do it. You are strong, stronger than you think, and this year will make you even stronger." Naomi bent over him, hugging him carefully, afraid of causing him pain. Marcus stroked her hair, just as he did when she was a child. "I love you, my girl," he whispered, "and I will be proud of you, always." 3 days later, Marcus Sterling passed away, quietly in his sleep, without suffering. Naomi was beside him, holding his hand until his last breath. The funeral was modest, attended only by the closest few. Naomi stood by the coffin, feeling utterly devastated. The world she knew had crumbled. Ahead lay a year-long trial that she couldn't fully comprehend. A week passed in a haze. The lawyer read the will. Everything was exactly as her father had said. 1 year working as a cleaner at Sterling Tech Group, or the entire estate would transfer to the charitable foundation. No loopholes, no exceptions. The condition was ironclad. Her father's legal team had ensured it. The company's corporate counsel, a dry, elderly man with a sharp gaze, handed Naomi an envelope after the formal reading. "Your father asked me to give this to you personally," he said sternly, "and he also instructed me to inform you. If you reveal your true identity before the term is up, the condition will be considered unfulfilled." Naomi took the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a brief letter, written in a shaky hand. "My daughter, do not be afraid. This is not a punishment. It is a gift. You will see things that will change you forever. You will learn the price of human dignity. You will understand that money is nothing without respect for people. Your father." Naomi folded the letter back up, hiding her tears. A gift. What a gift. To scrub floors and endure humiliation. But she had given her word, and she would honor it, no matter the cost. Monday morning, Naomi stood before the mirror in the tiny rental apartment near the office. She had rented the place specifically so no one would know where she truly lived, allowing her to show it to colleagues if necessary. But living there was part of the trial. On weekends, she planned to stay at her father's house sometimes. She had money for living expenses. Her father had provided for that. She wore a simple gray uniform, her hair pulled back into a basic ponytail, and no makeup. Naomi had removed all her jewelry and hidden her expensive items. The young black woman looking back at her from the mirror seemed like a stranger, pale, scared, and lost. "It's only 1 year," Naomi told herself. 365 days. I can do this. I have to do this. Sterling Tech Group was located in an industrial park, a massive building of concrete and glass surrounded by warehouses and workshops. She entered through the employee entrance, a narrow door on the side of the building where workers in overalls and technical staff congregated. No one paid her any attention. She was just one of them, an invisible person. The head of the housekeeping department, a full, middle-aged woman with indifferent eyes, gave her an evaluating look. Rivers, documents. Naomi handed over her work papers and ID. Her mother's surname raised no suspicion. The connection to Sterling had been obscured by her parents' divorce years ago. "No work experience? No specialized education?" the manager asked, flipping through the papers with a sour expression. "No," Naomi quietly replied. She certainly wasn't going to mention her university degree. "Fine. Brenda Hayes will train you. She's the senior cleaner, very experienced. Salary is minimum wage, same as all newcomers. Payments twice a month. Schedule is 6 days a week, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Half-hour lunch break promptly at 1 p.m. We don't tolerate tardiness. 3 late arrivals earn a fine. Skipping work gets you fired. Clear?" "Yes," Naomi barely managed. "Good. Go to the supply closet on the first floor. You'll get your uniform and gear there. Brenda will be over in 10 minutes. Naomi nodded and walked out into the hallway. Fear, anxiety, and a sense of impending doom mixed into one heavy feeling. She walked the corridors. Employees in business suits passed by, completely ignoring her. She was invisible, simply a cleaner, part of the decor. The supply closet was a tiny room with a narrow window near the ceiling. It smelled of bleach, old rags, and dampness. Shelves held buckets, mops, and bottles of cleaning fluids. Naomi pulled on the uniform, a faded gray smock. It was too big in the shoulders and too short in the sleeves, but there was no choice. A few minutes later, the door swung open, and an older black woman walked in, kind and friendly. Wrinkles around her eyes attested to years of hard labor, but her gaze was warm. "You the new one? I'm Brenda Hayes. We'll be working together." Naomi nodded and introduced herself. Brenda smiled, but a wariness lingered in her eyes. "All right, Naomi, I'll show you the ropes. There's a lot of work and never enough time. The main thing is, don't stand out. Do everything quietly and stay out of the boss's sight. They don't like it when the cleaners are too noticeable. You understand?" "I understand," Naomi quietly replied, though she didn't understand anything yet. Brenda picked up a bucket, filled it with water from the tap, added detergent, and handed Naomi a mop. "We'll start with the second-floor corridors. The offices are there, lots of people walking around. Everything has to shine by 10 a.m. Let's go." They left the closet, and Naomi felt her insides contract with fear and anticipation. It had begun. The year of the trial, the year that was supposed to change her forever. The first hour passed in a blur. Naomi scrubbed the floors, carefully running the mop over the linoleum, wiping dust from the windowsills and emptying trash bins. Her arms quickly grew tired. She had never done physical labor before. Her back ached from the constant bending. But the worst part was something else: the looks. Employees stared right through her, as if she didn't exist. Someone tossed trash right next to the bin, knowing it would be cleaned up. Someone bumped her shoulder while passing without apologizing. One man in an expensive suit stepped on her foot, rushing to a meeting, and didn't even turn around. Naomi clenched her teeth, continuing to work. "It's temporary," she repeated to herself. "Just 1 year. I can handle it." By lunchtime, she was exhausted. Naomi went into the cafeteria, a huge room with long tables where the laborers and technical staff ate. There was no air conditioning or comfortable chairs here, unlike the cafeteria for the high-level managers on the upper floors. It smelled of cheap food and sweat. Naomi picked up a tray with soup and mashed potatoes, unassuming but edible. She paid and sat at a far table, hoping to be alone. 2 women walked in. They sat down, not noticing her. One was young with bright lipstick and an arrogant expression. Her badge read, "Tiffany Dubois, Office Manager." The second was older, with a sharp gaze and a sarcastic smile. "Cynthia Pratt, Logistics Secretary." "Did you hear? The new cleaner started?" Tiffany asked, stirring her tea. "Uh-huh," Cynthia replied, taking a bite of her sandwich. "Saw her this morning. Young, pretty. Well, Ty Jenkins will handle her quickly enough." Naomi froze, her spoon halfway to her mouth. "No kidding," Tiffany smirked. "All the new cleaners go through him. It's like an initiation rite." They laughed a nasty, malicious laugh. "The main thing is she doesn't open her mouth," Cynthia added. "We have enough crazy problems around here. She should just do her job quietly." Exactly. The last cleaner started crying, "Harassment." They quickly put her in her place, fired her for being absent. "Right. You have to know your place here." They finished eating, got up, and left without even glancing in Naomi's direction. She sat there, thunderstruck. Tyrone Ty Jenkins, warehouse chief. She had heard that name. Her father sometimes mentioned him, complaining that he was harsh with subordinates. But what did handle her mean? And why were they talking about it so calmly, as if it were normal? Naomi put the spoon back in the bowl. Her appetite was completely gone. Inside, everything was boiling. Outrage, shock, fear. For the first time in her life, she was confronted with the fact that she was seen not as a person, but as an object, something to be used and discarded. "Is this what you wanted me to see, Dad?" she thought bitterly. After lunch, Brenda sent Naomi to the warehouse to clean up after a shipment unloading. Naomi took a mop and a bucket and headed to the far building where the warehouse was located. The building was old and grim. Long corridors, dim lights, ceiling-high shelves stacked with crates and pallets. It smelled of dust, machine oil, and something stale. Naomi entered the vast hall and began to mop the floor. There was a lot of dirt, boot prints, spilled oil, trash. She worked silently, trying not to think about Tiffany's and Cynthia's words, but the fear wouldn't let go. Not 10 minutes passed before she heard heavy footsteps. She turned around. A broad-shouldered, middle-aged man with a coarse face, an insolent gaze, and a self-satisfied smile stood before her. His badge read, Ty Jenkins, Warehouse Complex Chief. "Well, look who's new," he drawled, looking Naomi up and down as if assessing merchandise. "Cute. What's your name?" Naomi felt her insides constrict. "Naomi," she answered, trying to sound calm. "Naomi," Ty repeated, as if savoring the name. "Pretty name. Listen, Naomi, I need to explain something to you. We have our own rules here. You know what I mean?" Naomi remained silent, gripping the mop. Her blood ran cold. She knew exactly what was about to happen, what the women in the cafeteria had talked about. "You work here," Ty continued, taking a step closer, "and I'm in charge of the warehouse. That means you report to me, and you need to, how should I put this gently, be useful to me. You want your job to be comfortable, right? You want to avoid any trouble." He reached out, intending to touch her shoulder. Naomi sharply backed away. "I need to work," she said, trying to keep her voice from shaking. "Work," Ty smirked, and an unpleasant glint appeared in his eyes. "Sweetheart, you don't understand how things are run here. Everyone knows their place, and your place is where I tell you. If you're a smart girl, everything will be fine. Bonuses, days off, easy work. But if you start acting difficult," he shrugged. "Well, you get the picture." He took another step. Naomi felt her back press against a storage rack. Nowhere to retreat. Ty blocked her path, looming over her with his massive body. He smelled of tobacco. Naomi felt genuine terror. In that moment, she realized her father was absolutely right. She had never known what it was like for those with no protection, no money, no influence. She was helpless. Her word meant nothing. She was a nobody. Ty was reaching for her face when a clear, calm voice rang out. "Ty, step away from her." Ty froze and turned his head. Standing in the warehouse doorway was a man in his 30s, tall, lean, wearing a simple gray shirt and faded jeans. His face was composed, but his eyes held a firm look. His badge read, Elijah Vance, Engineer. "Vance!" Ty growled, not concealing his annoyance. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Forgot a tool in the supply room," Elijah replied in an even tone, "and I happened to see you bothering the new employee." "I'm not bothering her," Ty snapped. "I'm just explaining the rules of the job." "The rules of the job don't involve physical contact," Elijah calmly noted, moving closer. "Please, step away from her." Ty gnashed his teeth. He clearly wasn't used to being contradicted, but Elijah stood there, calm and confident, maintaining eye contact. A heavy silence hung between the two men. "She doesn't know how things work yet," Elijah added more gently. "Give her a chance to settle in, to get used to the team. And then, if there are any issues, they can be discussed in a normal setting." Ty snorted, but he took a step back. Naomi felt the air return to her lungs. "Fine, Vance," Ty said with a sneer. If you're jumping in for her, you must have your own eye on her. Oh well, just remember, I'm the boss here, and I'll be keeping an eye on this girl, sooner or later." He spun around and walked away with heavy steps, slamming the door shut. The silence in the warehouse was deafening. Naomi leaned against the rack, her knees shaking. The mop slipped from her fingers and crashed to the floor from the sheer force of her relief. Elijah bent down, picked it up, and handed it to Naomi. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. Naomi nodded, unable to utter a word. Her throat was constricted with rising tears. Is it always like this?" she finally managed to gasp out. Elijah sighed, dropping his gaze. "Unfortunately, yes. Ty Jenkins thinks the cleaners are his personal territory. He harasses all the new ones. Most of them endure it because they're afraid of losing their jobs. And for those who don't, he finds ways to get them fired. Absenteeism that never happened, missing inventory that he plants, complaints from supposedly dissatisfied customers. Ty has connections in management." Naomi felt a surge of anger. This was the true face of the company her father built. This was what was hidden behind the glossy reports and profit margins. Humiliation, fear, defenselessness. "Thank you," she said, looking Elijah in the eye. "Thank you for intervening." Elijah shrugged, slightly embarrassed. "It's just common decency. I'm sorry I couldn't do more. I'm just an engineer. I don't have influence." "You did more than anyone else today," Naomi quietly responded. Elijah smiled shyly, a little sadly. There was something touching about that smile. "What's your name?" he asked. Naomi Rivers." "Elijah Vance." He extended his hand. "Pleased to meet you." Naomi shook it. Elijah's hand was warm and firm. "If you have any more trouble with Ty," Elijah said, "try to stay close to other people. He rarely attacks when there are witnesses. And try not to be alone with him." "Okay," Naomi nodded. "I'll try." Elijah hesitated, as if wanting to add something, but then just nodded and walked away. Naomi watched him go, feeling a strange gratitude. In this cold, cruel world she had entered, there was a person who simply helped, without calculation, without demands. She picked up the mop and continued her work, but now a tiny spark of hope glowed in her chest. That evening, returning home, Naomi thought about Elijah, his talent that no one appreciated, his sacrifice, his honesty. Such people were rare, and it was unfair that they remained in the shadows while incompetent individuals like Walter Thompson sat at the top. I wonder what his story is. Why is such an educated man working as a simple engineer for minimum wage? She fell asleep with these thoughts, sinking into a heavy, restless slumber. The next morning, Naomi rose with difficulty. Her muscles ached as if she had been beaten. She managed to get to the shower, stood under the hot water, trying to loosen her stiff body. Then she put on the same gray uniform and trudged to work. Brenda met her in the supply closet with a look of sympathy. "Everything hurting?" she asked with understanding. "Yes," Naomi admitted honestly. "You'll get used to it. Your body will adjust in about 2 weeks. The main thing is, don't quit. A lot of new folks run off after the first couple of days." Naomi smiled bitterly. She couldn't run off. 1 year was the condition of the will, but Brenda didn't know that. "Today, we'll clean the offices on the 3rd floor," Brenda said. "It's quieter than the warehouse, though the people there are pretty arrogant. But just work quietly. Don't get involved in conversations. They don't want the cleaners to be seen too much." They went up to the 3rd floor. This was where the mid-level management offices were located. Bright offices, comfortable furniture, air conditioning, a completely different world compared to where Naomi and Brenda worked. They started with the corridor. Naomi mopped the floors. Brenda wiped the glass. Employees came and went from their offices, talking and laughing. No one paid the cleaners any mind. Then, Tiffany Dubois, the office manager who had discussed the cleaners in the cafeteria yesterday, walked out of an office. She was carrying a stack of papers and talking on the phone. As she passed Naomi, she carelessly tossed an empty coffee cup right onto the freshly mopped floor. Naomi froze. The cup rolled, leaving a brown trail. Tiffany didn't even look back. She continued walking, chatting into the phone about some meetings. Brenda silently walked over, picked up the cup, and wiped the floor clean. Her face remained calm, but a pang of pain, a familiar old pain from constant humiliation, flashed in her eyes. "Is it always like that?" Naomi quietly asked. "Always," Brenda answered just as quietly. "They don't see us as people. For them, we're just part of the furniture, like mops or buckets." Naomi frowned. Anger churned inside her, but she couldn't do anything. For now, she was just Naomi Rivers, the cleaner, a nobody. By lunchtime, they had finished the third floor. Naomi went to the cafeteria again, sat at the same far table, and got the same cheap meal. Brenda sat down next to her. "You're holding up well," she said approvingly. "Many new hires are crying or causing a scene by the second day." "And what's the point of causing a scene?" Naomi replied tiredly. "Exactly. You just have to do your job and ignore the rudeness. Over time, you stop noticing." "But that's wrong," Naomi couldn't help but say. "People shouldn't treat each other that way." Brenda looked at her with a sad smile. "Sweetie, in an ideal world, yes. But we don't live in an ideal world. We live where some people have power and others don't. And the ones with power do whatever they want." Naomi wanted to argue, but stayed silent, because Brenda was right. And her father wanted her to understand this firsthand, without rose-colored glasses. After lunch, they were sent to the lab to mop the floors and take out the trash. The lab was in a separate wing of the building. Engineers and technicians worked here, developing new equipment. Naomi entered the spacious room, which was filled with tables holding instruments, computers, and schematics. Elijah Vance was sitting at one of the tables. He was so absorbed in his work that he didn't even notice their arrival. Naomi started mopping the floor, trying not to make noise, but curiosity won out. She secretly watched Elijah. He was soldering something, checking a schematic on the monitor. His face was focused, his movements precise. "Vance, what are you working on?" a sharp voice called out. Walter Wally Thompson, the head of the development department, a plump man in his 50s with an arrogant expression, entered the lab. Elijah looked up. "I'm finalizing the schematic for the new controller, Walter. You asked for it by Friday." Yeah, Thompson dismissed him. "Just no playing around. You understand? Stick strictly to the technical specifications. No improvements or new features. We have standards, not your fantasies." Elijah winced, but nodded. "Understood." Thompson walked around the lab, looked at papers on other tables, muttered something to himself, and left. Elijah sighed, returning to his work. Naomi involuntarily caught his eye. Elijah recognized her and smiled. "How are things? Ty hasn't bothered you again?" "No, not yet," Naomi replied softly, glancing around to make sure Brenda wasn't listening. "That's good. Keep away from him." "I'll try." Naomi hesitated, then asked, "What is it you're working on?" Elijah brightened. "I'm developing an electronic controller for the production line. It's supposed to automate the packaging process, see?" He pointed to the schematic. "The sensors here read the size of the product, and the controller selects the appropriate packaging. It will save time and reduce waste." Naomi listened, fascinated. Elijah spoke with such passion. It was clear he loved his work. "And that man who was just here?" she began. "Thompson," Elijah grimaced. "My boss. He's afraid of anything new. He thinks any changes threaten his position, so he squashes any initiative." "But your ideas could improve production." "They could. But Thompson doesn't want that. He wants stability and peace, so he can sit in his chair until retirement and collect his paycheck." Naomi shook her head. Here was another problem with the company that her father hadn't known about. Talented people were being stifled by mediocre bosses who feared competition. "Elijah, why don't you go to another company?" she asked. "With your knowledge, you could find a better place." Elijah's face darkened. "I have a sick mother. She needs constant care. I can't leave the city and I can't risk my job. The pay is low here, but it's steady. Other places might not hire me, or they might demand overtime or travel. That won't work for me." Naomi felt a pang of sympathy. Here was a real hero, a man sacrificing his ambition for the sake of a loved one, not for money, not for glory, just because it was the right thing to do. "Naomi, let's go!" Brenda called from the corridor. "2 more floors left." "I have to go," Naomi said to Elijah. "Of course. Thanks for listening to my complaints," he smiled. "They're not complaints, they're reality," Naomi replied and left the lab. That evening, returning home, Naomi thought about Elijah, his talent that no one appreciated, his sacrifice, his honesty. Such people were rare, and it was unfair that they remained in the shadows while incompetent individuals like Thompson sat at the top. "I have to do something," Naomi decided. "When the year is over, when I become the owner of the company, I will change everything." But for now, she was just a cleaner who saw and remembered. At home, she pulled out a notebook and started writing. Names, facts, injustices, everything she had witnessed in those 2 days. Ty Jenkins harassing the cleaners, Walter Thompson stifling talented employees, Tiffany Dubois being rude to subordinates, and so on. This notebook would become her weapon when the time came, but now she was a nobody, and she had to see this through to the end. She went to bed feeling exhaustion weigh her down like lead. But a tiny spark of resolve glowed in her soul. She would succeed. She would endure, for her father's memory, for the company's future, and for people like Elijah and Brenda, who deserved better. Month 1. The year had only just begun. 30 days of hard labor, humiliation, and discovery passed. Naomi learned to hold the mop so her back wouldn't ache by the end of the day. She learned to be invisible, to pass by employees without attracting attention. She learned to keep silent when she wanted to scream. But most importantly, she learned to see what had previously been hidden behind the beautiful facade of a successful company. Every day revealed new facets of injustice. Denise, a cleaner who had worked there for 15 years, was paid the same minimum wage as newcomers. When she asked for a raise, she was told she could look elsewhere. Jalen, a forklift driver, worked night shifts, but the overtime wasn't paid. Management claimed it was voluntary. The cafeteria cooks cut corners on ingredients because the budget had been slashed while the portion sizes were increased. Naomi wrote everything down in her notebook. In the evenings, in her rental apartment, she sat down and methodically documented the facts. Names, dates, specific incidents. This notebook became her personal investigation. But there were bright spots, too. Brenda Hayes became more than just a mentor. She was almost a mother figure. She taught Naomi not just the job, but also how to live among ordinary people. "See that young guy?" Brenda once whispered, nodding toward a young loader. "That's Corey. He's 23 years old and already supporting his 2 younger siblings. His parents died in an accident 2 years ago. He slaves away here for 12 hours and then looks for side gigs." Naomi looked at Corey, who was lugging heavy boxes, and her heart ached. How many such stories were there all around? How many people were fighting for survival, while those at the top didn't even know their names? Elijah Vance also became part of her life. They often crossed paths. Naomi cleaned the lab 3 times a week, and Elijah was always there, bent over his blueprints and schematics. Gradually, cautious conversations developed between them. "How is your mother?" Naomi would ask, wiping down tables. "A little better today," Elijah would reply without looking up. "The new medication helps a bit, but it's very expensive. Half my paycheck goes to that." "And what do the doctors say?" "They say she needs surgery. But it costs so much. I couldn't save that much in a lifetime." Naomi remained silent, feeling powerless. She could help right now. She had the money, saved even before this year began. But she couldn't reveal herself. The condition of the will was strict. No one must know who she was. But she could help in other ways. Subtly, anonymously. Naomi began to act cautiously. First, she studied the company archives. In the evenings, when everyone was gone, she stayed, supposedly to clean offices, and dug through documents. She found Elijah's old development reports, projects that Thompson had rejected or taken credit for. One report especially interested her. 3 years ago, Elijah had proposed a system for automating warehouse inventory. Thompson had rejected the project, calling it unrealistic. But 1 year later, he implemented a similar system purchased from an outside firm for 3 times the cost and received a bonus for innovative solution. Naomi made copies of the documents, then anonymously sent them to the HR department with a note. Attention! Plagiarism. The original author is Elijah Vance. 1 week later, rumors started circulating in the company. Someone in HR had taken an interest. An investigation began. Thompson was nervous, snapping at his subordinates. Naomi observed from the sidelines, continuing to mop floors and take out the trash. No one suspected that the invisible cleaner was behind it all. The next step was the workshop. Naomi learned that there was an old room in the basement, previously used for equipment repair, but now vacant. She spoke to Mr. Earl Jackson, the maintenance supervisor, and surprisingly kind man. "Listen, Mr. Jackson," she said, "could I tidy up that workshop in the basement in the evenings? I need extra work and there's a lot of mess down there." Jackson shrugged. "Sure, go ahead. The space is sitting empty anyway. Just get the key from me and sign out on the log." Naomi gained access to the workshop. In the evenings, after her main work, she went down there and cleaned. She also left the door unlocked and spread the word among the engineers that the workshop was open for personal projects. Month 2. 3. Elijah found out about it 1 week later. He came by one evening when Naomi was finishing her cleaning. "Is it true that the workshop is accessible?" he asked, a hopeful note in his voice. "Yes," Naomi nodded, pretending she was just doing her job. "Mr. Jackson allowed it. He says as long as people use it and keep it tidy." "Oh my gosh, that's a lifesaver," Elijah burst out. "I really needed a place for my experiments. I don't have space at home, and Thompson controls my every move in the lab." "Well, now you have a spot," Naomi smiled. From then on, Elijah started coming to the workshop almost every evening. He worked on his personal projects, the ones Thompson had disapproved of. Naomi occasionally dropped by, supposedly to check on the cleanliness, and saw how eagerly he soldered circuits and tested instruments. His eyes shone. One evening, as Naomi was dusting in the workshop, Elijah suddenly spoke. "You know, Naomi, sometimes I think my life is a dead end. Stuck in a position where I'm not valued, caring for my sick mother, unable to leave the city, living paycheck to paycheck, and I can't change anything." Naomi stopped and looked at him. "But you don't give up. You keep working on your projects and you take care of your mom. That's strength." Elijah smiled sadly. "Or weakness. Strong people change their lives. I just float along." "No," Naomi said firmly. "Strong people are those who don't abandon their loved ones for a career, who maintain their dignity even when they are humiliated, who do their job well even if no one notices. You are exactly that kind of person." Elijah looked at her, surprised. "You're unusual, Naomi. Not like the other cleaners. You talk like, I don't know, like you see more than others." Naomi felt a moment of panic. She needed to be careful not to give herself away. "I just like to observe people," she answered evasively. "And to think. That's rare," Elijah smiled. "Most people don't think. They just exist." They fell silent. The silence was comfortable, warm. "Naomi," Elijah suddenly said, "thank you for listening, for just being here." Naomi felt her heart leap. She knew she was falling in love with this man, his kindness, his honesty, his talent, but she couldn't say anything. There was a gulf between them, not social, but a gulf of lies. He didn't know who she was, and she couldn't reveal herself. Month 4. 7. Time passed. The second month. The third. Naomi got used to the hard labor. Her hands were rough. Her skin was not as soft. She had lost weight and grown physically stronger, But most importantly, she had changed internally. Now she saw the world through the eyes of those at the bottom. She understood their fears, their hopes, their dreams. She knew the value of every cent because she understood how hard it was earned. She felt the humiliation when Tiffany Dubois threw trash onto the freshly mopped floor. She felt the fear when Ty Jenkins walked by with a lustful stare. But she also learned to appreciate the small things: Brenda's warm words, Elijah's smile, the gratitude of a worker whose jacket she helped clean. In parallel, Naomi continued her secret activities. She slipped anonymous notes to HR, pointing out egregious cases of injustice. She found a way, through a contact in accounting, to properly submit Elijah's overtime so he received extra pay. She arranged for the cafeteria cook to receive an increased budget for food. All this was done subtly, through third parties, through anonymous letters. No one suspected that the simple cleaner was behind it. Elijah started to change. His projects from the workshop began to get noticed. A young engineer saw his design and showed it to management, bypassing Thompson. The project was approved and even began to be implemented. Elijah was given a bonus. When Naomi learned of this, her heart filled with joy. She had done the right thing. She had helped a good person without revealing herself. One day in the cafeteria, Elijah sat next to her during lunch. Employees usually didn't sit with the cleaners, but Elijah was different. "Naomi, I have news," he said excitedly. "My project was approved. They're implementing it on the production line, and I got a raise. That's wonderful." Naomi genuinely beamed. "Congratulations. Now I can take out a loan and pay for my mom's surgery. The doctors say there's every chance she'll recover." Naomi felt immense relief. This was true. Human happiness, not from buying another expensive item, but from the ability to save a loved one. "I'm so glad," Elijah continued, "that I didn't give up, that I kept working no matter what. You know, I feel like I've had a guardian angel. So many lucky coincidences over the last few months, as if someone is helping invisibly." Naomi lowered her eyes, hiding a smile. "Maybe it's just fate?" "Maybe," Elijah agreed. "But I believe there are kind people in the world who help without expecting thanks." He looked at her warmly, and Naomi felt her whole world shift. This man. He was becoming dearer to her with every day, with every meeting, but she couldn't say anything. Not yet, not until the year was over. By the end of the 4th month, changes were happening in the company. The audit initiated by anonymous complaints uncovered many violations. Thompson was demoted. It turned out he had indeed plagiarized others' ideas. Tiffany Dubois was stripped of her bonus for rudeness to subordinates. Someone had recorded her and given the tape to management. Ty Jenkins remained in his position for the time being. He was trickier and more cautious. But Naomi knew his turn would come. She was gathering material on him, testimony from the cleaners he had harassed, records of warehouse shortages he blamed on others. All of it was written in her notebook, awaiting its time. In the middle of the 7th month, a crucial event occurred. Elijah paid for his mother's surgery. Naomi learned about it when he returned to work after a week away. His face was beaming with happiness. "Naomi," he called out to her in the corridor, "I have great news. My mom's operation was successful. The doctors say she's on the road to recovery." Naomi stopped, feeling joy for him. "That's wonderful, Elijah. I am so happy for you and your mother." "You know," he continued with enthusiasm, "I keep wondering where all this good luck is coming from. The raise, the project recognition, the money for the surgery. It's like someone up high is helping." Naomi looked down, hiding a smile. "Maybe you just earned it with your hard work." "Maybe, but I still feel like there's a kind person nearby helping out unnoticed." He looked at her tenderly, and Naomi felt her heart clench. If only he knew how close he was to the truth. "I'm just happy for your happiness," she quietly replied. Elijah lingered, as if he wanted to say something more, but then just smiled and walked on. Naomi watched him go, feeling mixed emotions, joy for him, sadness from the impossibility of opening up, and a strong, overwhelming love that she had to hide. By the end of the 7th month, Naomi decided to deal with Ty Jenkins. He had gone unpunished for too long. His harassment continued. Fortunately, after the first incident, he avoided Naomi. But other young women were not so lucky. Recently, a new cleaner named Kiara had started work. Very young. Ty went after her from the first day. Naomi saw Kiara leaving the warehouse with tear-stained eyes. She asked her gently. The girl was silent at first, then broke down. He said if I didn't agree, I'd be fired. I can't lose my job. My mom is disabled. Naomi hugged her, calmed her, and then decided, enough. Ty had to answer for his actions. She began gathering evidence. She talked to other cleaners who had suffered under Ty, recording their testimony. She secretly placed a recorder in a corner of the warehouse under a rack. She recorded several conversations where Ty blatantly blackmailed the young women. Then, she compiled everything into a voluminous dossier. 5 women's testimonies, audio recordings, dates, times, specific facts. She also added documents about strange inventory write-offs from the warehouse that Ty had blamed on subordinates. The dossier landed on the desk of the general director, Robert "Rob" Ellington, who was temporarily managing the business. Anonymous, but impeccably substantiated. 1 week later, Ty Jenkins was fired, officially for systematic violations of labor discipline and abuse of power. An investigation into the theft was also initiated. When the news spread through the company, Naomi saw the relief on the faces of the cleaners. Kiara came up to her in the supply closet and hugged her. I don't know who reported him, but it's a miracle. A real miracle. Naomi only nodded, saying nothing. She was just a cleaner who happened to be nearby. Month 8. Saving Elijah. The 8th month brought a new trial. Thompson, despite his demotion, hadn't given up. He harbored resentment toward Elijah, seeing him as the cause of his downfall, and decided to take revenge. One morning, Elijah was called to the general director's office. Naomi learned about it from Brenda, who had overheard the secretaries talking. Her heart sank. Something was wrong. By lunchtime, rumors were swirling through the company. Elijah was accused of stealing intellectual property. Allegedly, he had stolen blueprints for a development project his department was working on and tried to sell them to competitors. Naomi's blood ran cold. It was a lie, a blatant lie, and she knew who was behind it. Thompson. Revenge. She rushed to find information. She found out that Thompson had planted fabricated email correspondence and a fake contract with a rival firm on Elijah. Everything looked convincing. Elijah faced termination and a lawsuit, possibly even criminal charges. Naomi couldn't let this happen. She had to act and fast. That evening, she infiltrated Thompson's office. She had long since memorized the cleaning schedule and knew when the room would be empty. She hacked into his computer. She had watched him type his password a month ago while cleaning the office. She found the correspondence in which Thompson discussed his plan to frame Elijah with a friend. She copied everything onto a flash drive. Then, she went up to the server room, which was also on her cleaning route. She found evidence in the logs that the emails sent in Elijah's name had originated from Thompson's computer and that the IP address had been spoofed. She compiled all of this into a new dossier. This time, she didn't send it to the general director, but to the legal department with a note. Materials related to the Vance case. Check the source of the accusations. She waited for 2 days, consumed by anxiety. Elijah was grim and dejected. She met him in the corridor one day. He looked like he had aged 10 years. Naomi, he said quietly, they're accusing me of something I didn't do. I don't know how to prove it. If I'm fired, I won't be able to pay for my mom's treatment. Everything will fall apart. Naomi took his hand. It was the first time she had allowed herself such a gesture. Elijah, believe me, the truth will come out. You are an honest person, and that will be proven. Where does such confidence come from? He asked with a bitter smile. Because I believe in justice, Naomi said firmly, and that good people shouldn't suffer. Elijah looked at her with tenderness, then squeezed her hand. "Thank you. You're the only one who supports me." On the third day, the investigation results came in. The lawyers discovered the fabrication. Computer experts confirmed the forgery. Thompson was immediately fired, and a lawsuit was launched against him. Elijah was completely exonerated and received an official apology. Moreover, he was appointed head of development in Thompson's place. When Naomi learned of this, she locked herself in the supply closet and cried, from relief, from joy, from the overwhelming emotions. She had saved him. She had saved the man she loved. 11. The 9th month was a time of change. Elijah, in his new role, began to transform the department. He secured pay raises for talented engineers, implemented new projects, and created a healthy atmosphere. He was respected and valued. Naomi continued to work as a cleaner, but now she saw the fruits of her efforts. The company was changing, slowly but surely. Injustice was punished, honesty was rewarded. She found herself watching Elijah more and more often. He was becoming more confident, happier. He wore new suits now. His salary allowed it. His mother was recovering. Life was looking up, and he sought out Naomi's company more frequently. They now ate lunch together almost every day. They talked about everything: work, life, dreams. Elijah shared his plans for improving production, and Naomi listened, offering advice. Sometimes he was surprised by her insight. "You talk like an executive, not a cleaner," he once remarked. Naomi only smiled. "Maybe I was an executive in a past life?" "You know," Elijah said thoughtfully, "you really are a mystery, but I like it. You don't try to impress anyone. You don't play a role. You're just real." Those words stung Naomi. Real. She had been living a lie for 9 months, hiding who she was, deceiving the man she loved. "Elijah," she quietly said, "tell me honestly. If you found out that someone you knew was completely different from who they claimed, could you forgive them?" Elijah paused. "It depends on the reason. If the person deceived me out of malice, out of wickedness, no, I wouldn't forgive them. But if they had a good reason, if they remained a good person despite the lie, I think so. The important thing isn't the words, it's the actions." Naomi nodded, memorizing every word. She hoped that when the time came, he would remember them. The 10th month was calm. Naomi continued her double life. By day, a cleaner quietly doing her work. By evening, a guardian angel changing people's fates. She helped Corey, the young loader, get a promotion. He became a foreman. His salary doubled. She arranged for Brenda Hayes to be named Employee of the Year and receive a cash prize. She achieved improved working conditions in the workshops, new ventilation, comfortable uniforms. The company was getting better, and no one knew that the quiet, invisible cleaner was behind it. The relationship with Elijah grew warmer. They were no longer just colleagues who occasionally spoke. They were friends, or perhaps something more, but both were afraid to admit it. One evening, when they were both working late, Elijah finishing a project and Naomi cleaning the area, he suddenly asked, "Naomi, are you seeing anyone? A husband? A fiancé?" She froze. "No, why?" "It's just surprising. Such a smart, kind, beautiful woman, and alone." Naomi felt her cheeks flush. "Maybe I haven't met the right person yet?" "Or you have, but you're afraid to admit it?" Elijah quietly asked. Naomi looked up at him. He was serious, attentive, and his gaze reflected the same thing she felt. "Elijah," she whispered. But she didn't get to finish. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. They quickly moved away from each other. The moment was lost, but Naomi knew, soon, very soon the year would end, and then she could tell him everything, if he forgave her deception. The 11th month flew by. Naomi felt the climax approaching. 30 more days, and the year would be over. 30 days until she could take off the mask and be herself. She finished all her secret tasks. The list of injustices was exhausted. Good people received deserved recognition. Bad people were punished. The company was completely different, and her father would have been proud. On the last day of the 11th month, Elijah invited Naomi for a walk after work. They strolled through the city streets, talking about life. Suddenly, Elijah stopped and turned to her. "Naomi, I have to tell you, I'm in love with you. I don't know how it happened, but over these months, you've become the most important person to me." Naomi's heart stopped. "I know," he continued. "We're in different positions. I'm a department head, you're a cleaner, but I don't care. To me, you're just Naomi. Wonderful, amazing, unique." Tears welled up in Naomi's eyes. "Elijah, me too. I love you too. But there's something you need to know. Tomorrow. I'll tell you everything tomorrow. Please wait just one more day." Elijah nodded and embraced her. In that embrace, Naomi felt both happiness and fear. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, he would know the truth. Scene 12. A new beginning. The last day of the 12th month dawned a clear spring morning. Naomi woke with a heaviness in her heart. Today, it would all end. The year of the trial was over. Today, she would take off the mask and become herself. She put on the usual gray cleaner's smock. She looked at herself in the mirror one last time. The woman looking back was not the same Naomi who had started this journey 1 year ago. She was stronger, wiser, more human. She had learned the value of work, dignity, and honesty. She had learned to see people without masks. On the way to work, Naomi remembered the year. The first day when Ty harassed her in the warehouse and Elijah saved her. The talks with Brenda, who taught her to be invisible. The countless hours of cleaning, when her arms and back ached. But most importantly, the moments when she helped people, when she saw their gratitude, their happiness, when she knew she was making the world a little better. At the company, Brenda met her. "Last day, huh?" she asked with a sad smile. The year went by fast. Naomi looked at her in surprise. "How did you know?" Brenda smirked. "Sweetie, I saw your employment record when we processed you. Contract was for exactly 1 year. Unusual condition. Plus, you're too smart for this job. I knew right away something wasn't right. But I didn't pry. Everyone has their secrets." Naomi hugged the senior cleaner. "Thank you, Brenda, for everything. You taught me more than any university." "Go on, girl," Brenda whispered. "Go and do what you came here for." At 10 a.m., Naomi headed for the general director's office. The secretary tried to stop her. "Where are you going? The director is in a meeting." "Tell him Naomi Rivers asks for a meeting. Marcus Sterling's daughter." The secretary's face went blank. She grabbed the phone, quickly relaying the message. 1 minute later, the office door burst open. General Director Robert "Rob" Ellington, an old friend and partner of her father's, stood on the threshold, astonishment on his face. "Naomi, is that really you?" "Yes, Robert. The year is up. The condition of the will is fulfilled." She handed him the document, and the director read it, unable to believe it. "The notary warned me that the secret heiress would claim her rights in 1 year, but I never imagined it was you." He ushered her into the office. Several top managers were sitting at the conference table. They all stared at the cleaner who had just walked in. "Gentlemen," Ellington said, "allow me to introduce you. This is Naomi Sterling, Marcus Sterling's daughter, and now the rightful owner of the company." Silence descended. Then questions, confusion, and shock erupted. Naomi raised her hand, calling for quiet. "I understand your surprise. A year ago, as per my father's will, I had to work as a cleaner in this company under my mother's surname, incognito. I fulfilled the condition, and now I am ready to take over the management." "But why?" one of the managers asked. "Why such a strange condition?" "So that I could see the company from the inside," Naomi answered calmly. "So that I could understand how ordinary employees live. So that I could learn to distinguish honest people from crooks. My father was a wise man. He knew that without this experience, I wouldn't be a worthy leader." The meeting lasted 2 hours. They discussed formalities, the transfer of authority, and future plans. Naomi listened, answered questions, and demonstrated knowledge of all the company's processes. The managers gradually grew respectful. This young woman knew more about the company than many of them. By lunchtime, everything was decided. Tomorrow, a general employee meeting would be held, where Naomi would officially introduce herself as the new owner. After the meeting, Naomi went to find Elijah. She found him in the lab. He was deep in his work, not noticing her arrival. "Elijah?" she quietly called. He looked up and smiled. "Naomi, I was thinking about you, about what you wanted to tell me." "Come with me," she said. "I need to show you something." They left the building and sat on a bench in a small square nearby. It was a warm spring day. Birds were singing, and the sun was shining brightly. "Elijah," Naomi began, squeezing his hand, "I have to confess something. I am not who I said I was." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "My name is Naomi Rivers, that's true. But Rivers is my mother's surname. By my father, I am Sterling. Marcus Sterling was my father." Elijah went pale. "What? The founder's daughter?" "Yes. 1 year ago, my father passed away. According to his will, to receive the inheritance, I had to work for a year as a cleaner under my mother's name, so no one would know, and I did it." Elijah was silent. His face was impassive, but his eyes betrayed a storm of emotions. "So, all this time, you were deceiving me?" he finally said. "I couldn't tell you the truth. The condition of the will was strict, but I didn't deceive you about the most important thing. My feelings for you are real. Everything I said, everything I did, that was the real me, the real Naomi." "Real?" Elijah asked with a bitter laugh. "You were hiding who you were, playing a role. I fell in love with Naomi the cleaner, and she turns out to be a millionaire." "No!" Naomi exclaimed, gripping his hand tighter. "You fell in love with me, the one who scrubbed floors, washed windows, and endured humiliation, the one who listened to your dreams and supported you. The money, the title, that's just external. Inside, I am the same woman, and I am still black, Elijah. That hasn't changed either." Elijah looked away. "I need time," he said quietly. "I need to process everything." Naomi nodded, feeling her heart tear apart. "I understand, but know that I love you, the person you are, honest, kind, talented, and that love doesn't depend on titles or money." She stood up and walked away, leaving him on the bench. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. She had feared this moment all year, and now it had come. The next day, all the employees gathered in the main company hall, workers, engineers, managers, and cleaners. The hall buzzed with voices. Robert Ellington stepped onto the stage and took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, today is a special day. I want to introduce you to the new owner of our company. Per the will of Marcus Sterling, his entire estate and business transfer to his daughter. Please welcome Naomi Sterling." Naomi walked out to applause. She took the microphone, surveyed the hall, and found Brenda's eyes. She saw Elijah. He was standing off to the side, his face unreadable. "Hello," Naomi began calmly. "My name is Naomi Sterling, but for many of you, I was just Naomi, the cleaner. For 1 year, I worked here. I mopped floors, took out trash, and wiped dust. By the condition of my father's will, I had to do this." Silence fell over the hall. "Why?" Naomi continued. "Because my father wanted me to see the company through the eyes of those at the bottom, so I could understand how ordinary employees live. And I saw. I saw injustice, humiliation, and fear, but I also saw honesty, dignity, and heroism." She paused. "I saw cleaners who go unnoticed, but without whom the company couldn't operate. Workers who slave away for cents to feed their families. Engineers whose talents are stifled by incompetent bosses. And I decided to change that." Applause rippled through the hall. This year, I helped some of you anonymously. I helped some get raises, some get fair pay, and some get rid of tyrannical bosses. I was in the shadows, and now that I am the owner, I will continue this work, but openly." She walked to the edge of the stage. "Brenda Hayes, please come up." Brenda, bewildered, came onto the stage. Naomi embraced her. "This woman taught me how to be a person. She showed me that dignity does not depend on a job title. Starting today, Brenda Hayes is appointed the head of the housekeeping department with a deserving salary." The hall erupted in applause. Naomi named several more people, individuals who had worked honestly but remained in the shadows. All of them received raises and new positions. Then her voice grew firm. "But I also saw wickedness, harassment, theft, and the humiliation of subordinates. Ty Jenkins is already gone.